don't be too downbeat. So we'll see how we go. My name is Mark Anderson. I'm just finishing up here as a PhD student in the web science team here. And this is the dream where, yet again, I wake up and both my supervisors are in the audience. The thing I've been looking at is a slightly different angle maybe to what we've been talking about so far, which is knowledge, process knowledge, how your organization works in the context of hypertext. But I'm not again paper. There's my short-term memory. And I live surrounded by too many books. But it does seem odd that 50 years on, the writings and the work, especially of these two, is still really not so much used as perhaps it should be. We do have things like addressability, and I know people already touched on Doug's work, and most of you will know the Motherboard demos. And we do have text hypertext, albeit without visible links. But we're missing perhaps a richer picture. One of the problems, I've spent, I suppose, now 20 years supporting various knowledge tools. And part of the journey of that has been finding ways to capture knowledge so that I can maintain various trails, different trails through it, according to the needs of different people you're trying to support. It's once you break through the barrier of realizing you're not writing for yourself as an audience, but trying to inform others, the problem actually sort of gets more difficult. To those of you not familiar, this is actually one of Mark Bernstein's tools. Tinderbox is a tool that started out really as an offshoot, grew out really from some of the ideas in story space, which was for hypertext literature, and this is a general purpose tool offering a number of things. And this view here is new and quite experimental, which is trying to find a way to navigate the hypertext via the linkage structures within it, which in turn causes you to think about how you link things and your node size and your intent in that node size. So we're beginning to step away from writing long form prose and then trying to think how we just, put little clicky links in. This is turning it round to thinking about writing digitally native documents. So I had an interesting opportunity earlier this summer to go up to London, as Ted described it, to go work in the belly of the beast. And so I arrived at the Cabinet Office for 3 months, where they take all these awful sort of like PRE type photos. And you might wonder why I'm sitting behind 2 laptops. Well, the nightmare is, one is mine, one is the issue one. Mine is all full of research tools and connects to basically pretty much everywhere. The other one connects to the Cabinet Office document system and has only Microsoft Office and Google Cloud. And that's your work set. Absolutely impossible for doing any form of sensible knowledge work. This is used for writing memos, because it looks not like that, which is what you write letters on. And it has big text, so you can't write very much. And it's really quite frightening. That is as how I watched people work. So despite lots of bright people working very hard in difficult conditions and against the current, especially in the current political climate, nonetheless, they were struggling with this. So the air was permeated by the smell of spray glue, because everyone would go around it with bits of sticky paper and put them on the wall and things. And that was the only way they could break out of this. And so, despite the fact, telling them that they could be better, it was hard to put across. But the way I describe it to them is this, because the group that I was working in was looking at retention of documents for the public record. And so, for instance, the Cabinet Office has not been printing to paper since just after the beginning of the millennium. So there is no paper record. The archives are gone. The librarians have long since been laid off. And they have, at the moment, what they refer to as a digital heap. No one really knows what's in it. There are no techniques really for searching it. People wrote the early documents without any real sense of metadata. And even today, I would say of all the people I worked with, 1%, if that, really understood what metadata was. So the problem's not getting any better either. And one of the things that's really becoming apparent is Whereas for those who were old enough to remember sort of paper packs, I remember so young staff officer used to have the minutes on the left, the papers on the right, and you had a record of what was there, and that was what went to the disposal. Now, you might have 10 years of activity kept in documents that, whilst they have per edit storage, have no actual data as to the decisions, the actual points where effectively the document is crystallised. You just have an endless edit state, which you can only get to by reconstructing the edits, so it has no real usable information in it. And all the annotations, all the minutes, are scattered across hundreds, thousands, millions of emails, all of which link back to various different edit states of the document. It's a current and ongoing problem, which thankfully I now don't have to worry about, but it was writ large in this department because there's a statutory requirement to hold papers of interest, of national interest, for the long term. But it faces any organisation, basically, on a longer term. So, I mean, I just draw people back to some of these earlier writings. Computer Lib actually has just been republished in facsimile, so if you haven't managed to read it before, you can now. And there is a rumble, like Mark Bernstein said at Hypertext, that maybe there's going to be a new Hypertext version of Literary Machines. And I have digitised the text and I'm trying to persuade Ted to at least let us use a PDF version of it. He has a view on PDFs. But it's been very interesting. I mean, I've been actually, just to help things out, I've been doing some sort of archiving for Ted and transcribing some of his documents. And it is amazingly how fresh some of the stuff he was writing back in the 60s is now. And this, for those who don't know it, this is one of Doug's experiments of de-augmenting. So this idea of just understanding, you know, what effects our tools have. So here they'd actually taped a pencil to a brick, and then they were trying to write, and showing how it was just affecting their ability to communicate.
2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. Well, that's going to show. Anyway, if you haven't looked at Freud's Liquid Author, do so. I can't really dig at this now.
Listen to him.
No, seriously, it's got some really interesting ideas, and it's an attempt to step away from our old school style thing of just start at the top of the page, write down. So this was trying to show you can actually decompose the text. You can also have, so there are things that are linked, you can just have other things that aren't in there. So this is another way of looking at your annotations, things that aren't making the final textbook, which you need to know, and putting it in a more flexible space, which echoes back to the sort of thing I was showing with the tinderbox examples before. And that's...
No, you can keep talking about that forever.
Well, but not if people can't see it. You can show it to people later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? Yes.
I find that your comments about the Cabinet Office are very impressive, because that's largely what I found in my own research, is that if you have a bunch of very bright people who create information, if you give them the tools that we've got for doing that, the restrictions that you need to place on them to allow them to create the stuff in a reusable form consistently are so massively difficult to overcome that it's actually easier to give them a bunch of extremely dumb tools and say, look, I'm sorry, just do it.
Yeah. I mean, there is
you
also
sacrifice that because the education and the training and the setup necessary is gigantic, and we don't have a solution for that.
No, indeed, and that's something I noticed. I mean, I don't want to sound difficult about it. I'm actually very impressed by the Cabinet Office as an organisation, I think it's great. But yes, and the education and the amount of effort that goes into training people is next to nothing. I mean, there's a further problem that I can completely echo from my early days at sea, is just that if you're busy doing something all the time, it lulls you into the sense of security that you understand how, because you do it, you understand what it is. And one of the things that was really played back to me when I was, again, up in the Cabinet Office, where if you asked anyone what something was, the only way they could explain it was to actually do it. So they didn't even have, they couldn't even articulate their core process. They just did it all the time. And that's quite worrying, because if they're all on the same bus, obviously we have a problem.
Madeline?
Just wanted to give an alternate view from Singapore. So about 20 years ago, they basically adopted the Peter Schwartz scenario planning thing. and the Prime Minister's office drives that, and it's all models, and then they communicate using what-if scenarios. And they continue to do that, and all the different ministries are trained to do that, and there's a way to communicate beyond the digital heat. And so it really, I think the challenge for the UK to be Singapore on steroids is enormous.
Mm-hmm.
So even to be Singapore light would be difficult. Sorry, Mark. You do have a few more minutes.
Okay, that's fine.
Neil, please.
I just wanted to say that maybe if they took a few of the librarians after this who knew how to catalog stuff, the digital heat would be a little bit better organised.
No, I couldn't agree more, but that ship has sailed. So
Yeah.
savings measure. Don't need the field now, we've got digital. Les, make it three.
Well, I just wanted to ask, from what you saw, is the, if you like, the corporate government knowledge over the last 20 years, are people getting around or managing to use the digital heat, or have we caused the ignorance in government that we've seen over the last 20 years? Is it our technology?
Well, I think the ignorance...
Can we blame Google for Brexit?
I feel the ignorance sort of supports itself. You know, as I said, that's stream. But I think that one of the problems they have is that there is no managerial support of knowledge. So the general corpus think it's an IT problem. The IT problem is to keep this platter spinning and provide the substrate on which the knowledge lives. But there is no one sitting at the top table who's saying, you know, our knowledge is just dying around us. Meanwhile, everyone is just at it day in, day out, producing this constant output. And it's a problem. There is a so-called knowledge and information management skill that, when I looked up, is described by the management of knowledge and information. I guess not.
Just on that topic, I mean, some of the brightest text people in the world are here in the room, right? We do have some power to get together. But I found in my career talking about this, when I talk about text, it's like talking about glass. People see what's on the other side of the window, but they cannot see the glass. So for them to actually see what Mark is talking about, that your knowledge is actually stored somehow, and you interact with it somehow, it's even that conceptual leap is incredibly hard. So I'm hoping that the dialogue that you will all have today will get us baby steps
We've
towards
got
that.
time for break.
Yes, we do.
I'm wondering if you've read Soren Greer.
Nope.
He has an interesting background. He talks about information and going beyond the information processing paradigm, but he has a background in library and information sciences and offers a unique perspective about what library science has come to face, that when you have millions and then billions of documents, that no amount of machine processing can actually handle that. It just collapses because it becomes a hermeneutic problem. It becomes its interpretation, and the context is the whole context.
Well, I mean, the answer seems to most people is to use untrained AI. And when you point out that, you know, that's rather just tipping everything into hot, but they say, well, can't we train it? And when you ask them, well, we'll use untrained AI to train the untrained AI, and everything will be fine. And that's there's a level of understanding that I saw again in sort of central parts of government. Anyone else?
If anyone has a really quick one, since I was blabbering, no? Okay, thank you, Mark. Oh,
The
yes.
only thing that comes up again and again and again is ignorance can be treated with training and education. Stupidity can't. You need to be able to distinguish between those two.
We shouldn't talk too much about Boris Johnson today. Thank you, Mark.